Hey guys! Welcome to a new episode of my crypto gaming journey, and today I'll go over Legends of Venari, sharing what I learned from my 2 weeks of beta testing. I started playing when beta season rolled out, and even though things are now pretty clear, I initially had a lot of questions as I wanted to maximize my efficiency. This is my in-depth guide on how to get from a complete beginner all the way to the end game. Stick till the end of the video as you might find clues to a rare tier 3 Venaris location. Legends of Venari is a mobile-compatible browser-based creature collection RPG where you travel the world of Kairos in your search for mystical Venaris. These are elemental creatures split into 3 rarity tiers depending on their type. It might seem confusing at first as there are a lot of different traits, so let's do a breakdown of a general example. In the top left corner you can see the type of the Venari, which is basically its race. In this example, Palu. Right next to it you can see a green dot which symbolizes that it is a tier 1. For comparison, tier 2 has a blue dot whereas tier 3 has a purple dot. On the next row we have the Venari's elemental affinity, which in this case is air, followed by its constellation Vir and its size medium. Both the constellation and the size influence how many stat points the Venari has. Each Venari has 6 stats: constitution, power, intellect, agility, defense and fortune. The size of the Venari determines its constitution and agility based stats, whereas its constellation determines the other 4 stat based levels. These stats will play a huge role in the future as upcoming game modes will feature PvP combat. Finally, all the Venaris you catch will start out at level 1, but you can level them up using that respective elemental essence or shards. Each level grants additional stat points for your Venari, but I don't recommend spending your essences and shards right now, as we don't know the ideal combination of Venari type, elemental affinity and constellation. That means that when Venari abilities are revealed, there might be Venaris that benefit more from a specific elemental affinity and constellation. In order to get essences, you have to release Venaris of that elemental affinity, but they have to be at least tier 2. However, tier 2 Venaris also have a weekly limit, so if you end up finding and capturing one after all of them have been caught, you directly get its corresponding essences. In my case, I managed to capture 5 Earth Dactus, but each time the other players had already reached the limit, hence I got a total of 50 Earth essences. This is another aspect I didn't fully grasp in the beginning. The same type of Venari can have different rarities depending on its elemental affinity. For example, Water Dactus is tier 1, but Earth Dactus is tier 2. The world of Kairos has, so far, 3 main regions: Tecta, Aiena and Peleino, each with its own sub-regions. You start out in the city of Tecta and, in order to get access to more sub-regions, you need to level up your Tecta world. Once you reach Tecta world level 7, you get access to Aiena. Once you level that one up to 7 as well, you will finally be able to reach Peleino. Leveling up requires experience and you gain that by capturing Venaris. But before that, we first need to actually find Venaris. This requires you to place a bait in the region you want to hunt for Venaris. There are 3 tiers of baits, out of which tier 1 is the least expensive, costing around 500 gold coins. You start out with 5000 gold coins and each tier 1 Venari you capture grants you between 600 and 1000 gold. Tier 1 baits lure Venaris over a duration of 15 minutes and you are guaranteed to find at least 2 Venaris. The first one appears at 12 minutes and a half and the second one at 10 minutes. For the remainder of the time you have a chance of spawning up to 4 additional Venaris, leading to a grand total of 6 of which you can choose from. However, tier 2 baits have a 1 hour action time, whereas tier 3 baits fully complete in 12 hours. Once you found the Venari you'd like to capture, you need to spend a number of energy points in order to engage it. This number is dependent on the sub-region you are in. For example, in the initial zones of each region you are required to spend 2 energy points per attempt. Each energy point takes 5 minutes to be restored and initially you have a maximum of 20 energy points, but this limit increases as you progress through zones. For reference, once you reach higher level sub-regions in Peleino you get to a limit of 85 energy points, whereas getting to Tecta level 10 you get to a 90 point energy limit. Quick update: as I finished leveling all 3 regions to 10, the maximum energy limit obtainable at this point is 100. Next you must equip a rig and, optionally, a bait. So far, from my experience, tier 1 Venaris never required feeding, so don't waste your bait on them. The new Venari rotation did introduce an exception to this rule, a water Matox that has a full feed action sequence, but more on that later. In order to successfully capture a Venari, you must discover its action sequence. You have 3 options to choose from: play, fight, and, if you have a bait equipped, feed. Tier 1 Venaris require a 3 action sequence, Tier 2 a 5 action sequence, whereas Tier 3 a 9 action sequence. Each action you get right increases your capture chance, while getting 3 wrong ones causes the Venari to flee. This applies mainly to Tier 2 and Tier 3 Venaris, where you have way more combinations to try from. Even though it seems you might require a chess master's memory to play the game, there is a system in place to help you along the way. Once you encounter a Venari, the game remembers your action sequence, telling you both when you got them right as well as when you didn't. However, only Tier 1 Venaris keep the same action sequence throughout every encounter. Tier 2 and Tier 3 Venaris maintain the sequence you discovered only for the first 4 catches. This means that you need to guess a new sequence for Tier 2 and Tier 3 Venaris after every 4th successful catch. Apart from a lower spawn rate, this mechanic ensures digital scarcity for higher tier Venaris, but one that is not exclusive. Everyone has equal chances of catching them as long as they put in enough time. Important to note that some Venaris are specific to certain regions and even time of day. Moreover, some higher tier Venaris prefer plant baits, whereas others get lured by meat baits. You also have the option to end an exhibition, and even though it might seem counterintuitive, if you only spawn tier 1 Venaris with your higher tier bait, there is no point in wasting 10 energy points instead of just 2. The reason behind this is that higher level sub-regions require more energy points to engage a Venari. Getting to other regions allows you to find higher tier baits as well as upgrades for your rig that increase your chance of finding and capturing rare Venaris. In order to do so, I spam the first 3 sub-regions, City of Tecta, Glowing Forest and Tecta Slums with tier 1 baits. Once you get to Lyra, you find the first upgraded rig as well as tier 2 baits. I recommend going for the generalist rig and only switch it once you decide to capture a specific tier 3 Venari. At this point, I made the mistake of trying to mix leveling with hunting for tier 2 Venaris, and even though I did manage to capture 5 Earth Dactus, I spent a lot of energy points on this, slowing my leveling process. If I were to start all over again, I would strictly focus on speed leveling, and once I got all 3 zones to world level 7, then I would start placing higher tier baits for rare Venaris. Remember that when you reach higher level regions, you also get your energy limit increased, thus maximizing your efficiency. Moreover, in order to avoid overcrowding and inconsistency during beta testing, the team decided to rotate entire groups of Venari periodically. This decision allowed players to catch up with leveling before the major rotation that took place on the 13th of August. This rotation patch introduced a new group of never-before-seen Venaris, as well as a 2x bonus on both experience and gold reward for that weekend only. If you plan on min-maxing your leveling efficiency, you should know that there are certain races that grant more experience as well as gold coins. I will list a few of them in a descending order: Pi, Algala, Lumina, Noxus, Palu, Lorai, and Vilovi. As I mentioned in my previous videos, Creature Collection is one of the prime candidates for NFT gaming, players freely trading them and being rewarded for the time spent in game. However, creating such a game is extremely difficult as creatures need to have their own identity, while also being identifiable as part of the collection. It is challenging to compete in such a genre where Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh have reigned supreme for such a long time. Creating a healthy ratio between scarcity and player effort is also an obstacle many fail to overcome. Moreover, at the core of this kind of games lies a passionate community, eager to discover every mystery the game presents. Legends of Venari checks all of these requirements. Art looks fresh and identifiable to the title, and the devs created a balanced system of time commitment and risk-reward ratio when trying to catch higher tier Venaris. Last but not least, the Legends of Venari community is among the best I've seen in crypto gaming, veteran players helping out beginners, sharing tips and tricks and creating spreadsheets that allow others to find specific Venaris throughout the world of Kairos. I have played the game ever since beta season launched, farming non-stop, trying to find the most efficient way to maximize my Venari collection. This game is accessible for everyone as alpha passes can be bought on OpenSea or borrowed through their scholarship program, and even if you don't have the time requirement, you can still leave the game running in a window and check back on your baits capturing your favorite Venaris. Moreover, being mobile compatible means you can spend your energy points even when you are away from your computer. As I will be focusing more on catching rare spawns, Venari rotations ensure an exciting game loop as you have to discover new locations, spawn times and action sequences. Stay tuned for updates as the entire community is waiting eagerly for teasers surrounding PvP battles. I hope you caught my 3 clues on how to find this beautiful tier 3 lightning folickry. I'm eager to hear which is your favorite Venari, and, as usual, if you found this video helpful, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching!